Hello, everybody, and welcome in to another episode of Speaking Steagles, the premier Pennsylvania pro football podcast. I'm Nick Vete, joined as always by Ricardo Martinez-Paz. Steelers and Eagles both coming out victorious this week. I mean, that's what we like to see. Both kind of huge games. The Eagles with arguably their most impressive win of the season. We'll dive into that. The Steelers winning a close one with the Falcons, holding on at the end, winning by 3 points, keeping themselves somewhat alive, somewhat in the playoff conversation, at least in the conversation to be 500. So we're going to dive into both of these games. Great week of football for these two Pennsylvania sports teams. So that being said, Ricardo, how you doing this week, man?
I'm doing well, man. How you doing?
I am doing pretty good. It's been a little hectic. I had ski team tryouts for the Marist race team that I had to be at this Sunday, so I wasn't able to watch the games live. But when we took a break for lunch or at the end of the day when we came in around 3:00 and I checked and saw the Steelers were up, I said, hey, this is good. Let's see if they can hold on to it here. And then to see like the Eagles were just absolutely handling the Titans in a game that I think I was on here last week saying like I think the Titans are going to win this thing.
Yeah,
man, they totally proved me wrong, and I think they proved a lot of people wrong, and I think they made a statement with this win. So that's certainly an exciting game to talk about. I think we could save that for let's make that the second one because that's definitely that's a huge win right there. So we could dive into things with the Steelers first and foremost. Like I said, I wasn't watching the game live. Did see the highlights, read up a little bit on the game. So I do have a couple takeaways, but nothing too extensive here. My first one with this game, I think it's kind of first and foremost just with where the Steelers are at with everything that's going on. But you know what? You won a game that I said you got to win this. You got to go down to Atlanta. You got to get the win. And they did that. They went down. They won by 3 points. Wasn't necessarily the prettiest of games, but it's one of those things where I kind of said after the Bengals loss, it's going to be very hard for them to get in. They essentially have to win almost all of their remaining games, and you know what? They've done so far, and now they bring themselves to a spot at 5-7, where you're tied with the Browns, you're tied with the Raiders, and then right above you is just a couple teams that in the Chargers that are struggling a little bit. The Patriots have lost a couple games here of late. The Jets just lost this week. So, I mean, you've got a lot of work to do. You've got a lot of games that you still need to win because you have to leapfrog teams like the Browns, like the Pats, like the Jets, who all have tiebreakers on you because you lost games to them. But if you can keep winning games like this, you keep yourself in the conversation, and that's all you can really ask for as a Steelers fan. So that's my first takeaway is, hey, they're keeping their name relevant. They're not kind of falling off the wayside here.
Yeah, they definitely needed this win. We were talking about this last week, but we both said this was a winnable game against the Atlanta Falcons, whose defense wasn't all that good. The rushing attack again led the way for the Steelers, so they Najee had 86 yards on 17 carries, 5.1 yards per carry, 86 out of the 154 rushing yards. They leaned on that heavily, and Pickett again played a very clean game. So, clean games in terms of no turnovers, but again, another turnover-free game for this offense. That's the formula for winning games and at least staying in them. And they came out on top again.
Well, you touched on my other two takeaways very, very easily there, but that's exactly it. This is what it all encapsulates. It may have taken, up until, I guess, really, I guess the Saints game after the bye week, but they've established an identity. They finally figured out who they are. And frankly, it's the team that I think everybody kind of thought they were going to be at the start of the year. Run the ball with Najee Harris, even if your offensive line isn't that good. Try to limit turnovers. Don't ask your quarterback, whether it was Mitch Trubisky or Kenny Pickett at the start of the year, to do too much. I think that's what everybody expected them to do at the start of the year, and they were either struggling to find that success. Remember, Najee Harris was still dealing with that injury out of training camp that for whatever reason they weren't able to find it, and then they went into a really tough stretch of their schedule those 4 weeks before the bye. But coming out of the bye, like you said, they've played mistake-free football, another game without a turnover, And that's been their formula for success. So again, Kenny Pickett, no interceptions, nobody fumbled the ball. Nothing to complain about. They only 1-0. They won the turnover battle, but anytime you win the turnover battle, and you don't turn the ball over at all, it's a win. So that was my second takeaway. And then you touched on it as well. The third takeaway. The offensive line has really played well, and they created some serious running room for Najee Harris and the Steelers, offense as a whole here in this game. In total, I don't know if you mentioned 154 yards on the ground for the Steelers. So this has become their identity, and they've been doing it well the last couple weeks. And the offensive line, I'm harping on them because I was highly critical of them coming into the season, but you could make the case this was one of their better games of the year. No sacks. Kenny Pickett didn't get sacked once.
Yep.
Going up against a little bit of a lesser defensive line, but still nonetheless, Kenny Pickett stayed upright the whole game. So, hey, it's a good win. It wasn't always pretty at times. The second half they didn't score. They scored 3 points in the second half, but also when you go back and you kind of watch the way the game unfolded, and I was even looking through like each possession, kind of how things unfolded as well. It just seems to me like it wasn't really the type of second half where it was warranted. I mean, they had a nice 14-play, 75-yard drive, weren't able to get into the end zone. They got the field goal. That was their first drive of the second half. Then you had a 3-and-out, which you don't like to see later. But then the third time they got the ball in the second half, there was only 5.5 minutes remaining. So they're already kind of playing in a little bit of like a 4-minute offense. Let's drain some clock here. Still ended up being a 9-play drive that left the Falcons with 39 seconds left in the game, and that was when they threw the interception to Minkah Fitzpatrick. So
Yeah.
I don't really have a problem with the fact that they didn't score in the second half, and still, I mean, to kind of set themselves up with the not big lead, but I mean for the Steelers, I guess when you're up 10 points this season, it's a little bit of a big lead. Going into halftime though, it's good. It's hey, they've developed this formula for success, and I think it's something that this is going to kind of continue to be their identity through the rest of the year. And I'll get into the Ravens game later, but this is kind of, they've established who they are at this point.
Yeah, they definitely have. And I'll say, going back to that interception, that play that he could have easily just taken back to the house, he just ran out of bounds. Smartly so. I mean, there was 34 seconds left on the clock when he ran out of bounds, and then they just took a knee and ended the game. So, I mean,
yeah, and I think the announcers on the highlight I watched, the announcers even said, "Oh, like thinking back to the Jets-Browns situation where."
Yeah.
So I mean, it's like, hey, an unselfish play, and Minkah Fitzpatrick, obviously knowing the situation there, came up huge. So yeah, I like what I saw from the Steelers in this game. Now here's my question, because I keep saying, oh, like if the Steelers keep playing this way, if they keep staying relevant, you never know what can happen with the playoff picture. Do you echo that same sentiment? Do you see this as still something that could potentially happen, or is it just like, hey, they're winning football games at this point?
I mean, it could still happen. When you think about this upcoming week, the Ravens probably were going to be without Lamar Jackson, which I know you'll get into in a little bit. So, I mean, even with him, it still was going to be a close game. It still is going to be a close game, a division rival. And then they still have the Panthers, Falcons to play, the Browns, and the Ravens again at some point.
And they play the Raiders as well in there too.
Yeah.
I don't know if you just mentioned that, but
yeah, I think I did. But they're all winnable games. I mean, Deshaun Watson didn't look great in his first official game with the Browns. The Raiders, I mean, they're getting hot right now. They've won 2 straight. And then the Panthers, I mean, they kind of they're just there. They're not very good. They're one of the worst teams in the league. So I mean, if it's not impossible for them to win out, or I still think they're relevant at this point in time.
I think with the whole way that this schedule unfolds, I kind of want to save it a little bit for when we talk about this week's game with the Ravens, but
Yeah.
I like the way that their schedule goes. And I see people on Twitter who are saying like, "Oh, with where the Steelers are at and what their talent is, they should just be trying to lose games and get the draft pick, the best draft pick possible." Now, I think at this point, Ricardo, I don't know if we've ever actually had a formal discussion about it, but I am very anti-tanking.
Yeah. Yeah.
And especially when so many of these, like you can even tank for like a top, even if it's not a quarterback, tanking for a top prospect, I mean, it's a crapshoot. Sometimes these guys are still busts that you get in a top 5 pick. So I'm
Yeah.
anti-tanking, especially in the NFL. And with where the Steelers are at, they already have a quarterback who hopefully is going to be their quarterback of the future, their franchise quarterback of the future. So it's like,
Yeah.
what's the difference of, tanking and trying to lose games and getting a top 7 pick versus winning games, trying to make the playoffs, trying to build some momentum, trying to, develop your team. And obviously, Tomlin is never gonna. Tomlin, the Steelers organization is not culture. I'm talking purely to the fans on Twitter at this point.
Yeah.
But there's just no benefit to it because even if you're sitting in the mid round, mid first round at the 15th overall pick per se, at least you're gunning for the playoffs. You're establishing, hey, this is a goal that we have. This is a goal that we're certainly going to have next season. And it just comes down to scouting at that point. And a mid first round pick, it's nothing to cry about. And we've seen players all over in all different rounds have fantastic NFL careers. So it's just a clown comment to me to say that the Steelers should be trying to lose games at this point.
Yeah. I mean, especially now that they've won 2 straight, I don't like it just like they're still relevant. They still have a chance to make it. But well, the chances might be slim, but still, that's better than no chance at all, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, 2 straight, and 3 of their last 4 have been victories. And like we said,
Yeah.
in those last 4 games, they've established themselves in a formula to win football games. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm certainly of the mindset keep that up, and we'll break down the other games soon. But hey, got the win here. As for my player of the game, it was hard for me to really give one because I didn't watch the game live. But I was between Najee Harris, Cam Hayward, and Minkah Fitzpatrick. I think I'm going to go with Minkah Fitzpatrick here
Yeah.
because he led the team in tackles all over the field, filled up the stat sheet, and he had that key interception at the end, and the witty play to go out of bounds. So I'm gonna give it to him on this one. Minkah Fitzpatrick was my player of the game. So that being said, let's talk about. Am I bold to say that this was the biggest win of the Eagles season to this point, or the biggest statement? Maybe the biggest statement's a better way to phrase it.
Yeah, it was definitely the biggest statement. It was I mean, I thought this game was gonna be a lot closer than it was. First and foremost, I thought they were gonna struggle against Derrick Henry, um, which is one of my takeaways. In which I mean, the Eagles' defense is just absolutely. I'll get to the offense after, but I have to give credit to the Eagles' defense because I mean, they only allowed 10 points. They were only like in the first half. They shut out the Titans in the second. They sacked Tannehill 6 times and only allowed 141 pass yards. Derrick Henry only had 30 yards on 11 carries, which I didn't think was possible with this team. I mean, Jordan Davis didn't even play. I think he came in for a few snaps and didn't play the rest of the game. So he wasn't a factor in this really. So I mean, the other guys, the front 4 stepped up, front 5, whatever you want to call it, stepped up. Uh, I truly like that. That was the biggest surprise to me that they could contain him. And I mean, this is sort of the performance they needed. I mean, they didn't produce any turnovers, have any takeaways, but that they didn't really need them in this situation when I mean, we're just playing really well defensively, stopping Derrick Henry, which which the Titans' offense relies on. They rely on him. The offense goes through him. Whenever he doesn't, I can't remember the stat, but it was like whenever he doesn't rush for a certain amount of yards, like the Titans are, they have like a losing record or something like that. But I have to give credit to Jonathan Gannon's unit, defensive coordinator, and overall, this was arguably their best performance defensively.
Yeah, I mean, you said it. I mean, we've been harping on this the last couple weeks of the fact that they're letting these running backs go for huge games, and then in this one, arguably, I don't even think it's arguable. Top 5 running back in the NFL, Derrick Henry. He's not my number 1 running back in the NFL, but I think it's hard to say he's not a top 5 running back in the NFL. So a guy that can easily go off for over 150 yards in any given game, and the Eagles have been giving up a ton. To hold him, like you said, to 30 points is pretty damn impressive. Now, I will say, I mean, it was tied after the first quarter, and the Eagles put up 14 in the second. Do you think the fact that the Eagles kind of jumped to that big lead, do you think that was part of the reason that the Titans maybe steered away from Derrick Henry? Because they just didn't have the luxury of draining clock and running the ball.
Yeah, I think it was part of it. Because usually the Titans, I mean, they yeah, the run first team, and that's usually when they either are like, in a close game, or they're leading or something like that. But that just wasn't the case. And the 14 points just adds to the Eagles' second quarter like dominance. They're still first in the league by quite a wide margin when it comes to scoring points. So yeah, that definitely didn't help the Titans at all when the Eagles scored 14 points. I kind of do want to shift it to the offense because this was my first takeaway, but sort of flip things around. I mean, man, um, this was arguably Jalen Hurts' best game ever. Like his or passing game, it definitely was. It's just so fascinating to me that a week ago, this Eagles offense ran for 363 yards against the Packers, and then they they turned it around altogether. They have less than or fewer than 100 rush yards. Jalen Hurts has 380 passing yards, 3 passing touchdowns, a rushing touchdown, 130.3 passer rating, only had 9 incompletions. I mean, this was apart from two like minor mistakes from Hurts, this was his best game by far. It was, I mean, he earned him again the NFC Offensive Player of the Week. That's the second week in a row now that he's won it, this time because of his arm. And if there really were any doubts on his passing ability, I think this week against the Titans, it certainly showed why he's one of the best QBs in the league right now. So one of the hardest offenses to defend against. I mean, this was just like a master. Like I just was blown away by it. Some of the throws Jalen Hurts made, especially the touchdown pass to AJ Brown. I'll get to him in a sec. Um, the second one in particular, that was just dropped right in the bucket. AJ Brown just made such a good play on the ball and just gave his receiver a chance. It was just, man, the progression from last year to this year is I can't I don't even know. It's just that good.
It's
It's that
insane.
incredible. Yeah.
It really incredible is the perfect word to describe it. And I mean, this was a guy that coming into the season, it was like there was the skepticism of like, is he the future? I mean, I for one, I don't know if you were on this train as much as I was, but I was certainly on the train. Like, props to Howie Roseman for acquiring 2 first-round draft picks in case Jalen Hurts isn't the guy and he's got to move up in this upcoming draft to go and get a different quarterback to lead this franchise. Boy, was I wrong on that one. I mean, Jalen Hurts, you said it. And here's the beautiful thing. The progression that he's gone throughout the season, as you've highlighted, to all kind of culminate into this game, I think he demonstrated in this game everything that you want in a franchise quarterback. A guy, before we even get into the stats, clear leader of the huddle, clear leader of the locker room, such a presence among his teammates. He can make every throw. He's got a really underrated arm strength. I don't think people talk about how good his deep ball is, frankly.
Yeah.
You were just talking about how he dropped the ball in the bucket to A.J. Brown on that one throw. But the way that he's really honed in his accuracy, along with the cannon of an arm, plus the ability to rush. I mean, we know how in today's NFL, even if you're not necessarily a rushing quarterback, you need to have some sort of a mobility dynamic.
Yeah.
He encapsulates everything that you want in a franchise quarterback. And I think we saw it all on display in this one game. And I'm actually curious if you like this comparison. In college football, the talk is always, oh, well, when's someone going to have their Heisman moment? When's someone going to have their Heisman moment?
Yeah.
Was this game Jalen Hurts' MVP moment?
Yeah, I think it was. Blew out the Titans. I mean, this was it was just such a good performance. I mean, then you think about what happened around the league. I mean, Josh Allen was kind of out of the MVP conversation for a little bit, but he may have gotten himself back in it. Patrick Mahomes lost to Joe Burrow just now, so his MVP odds should be lower when you think about it like that.
Yeah.
And this is the only one-loss team in the NFL. I'm just shocked that like Hurts is not favored at this point. That like this is I don't know. It's just this definitely was his Heisman moment. And
I mean, I don't know where else you're pulling the MVP from if it's not one of those 3 guys. You know, and I almost laugh at it because I was listening to a segment that Peter King of NBC Sports had the other week where he was talking about his MVP candidates, and this was literally like max 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Max 2 weeks ago, he was saying his two MVP candidates, Patrick Mahomes, fine. Patrick Mahomes was one of them. His second one was Justin Jefferson. It's like, okay, fine. The Vikings have had they've exceeded expectations this season,
Yeah.
and Jefferson's having a fine year. But to put him over Jalen Hurts even 2 weeks ago is laughable. So I'm with you, man. I don't really know where else the MVP is coming from this season if it's not coming from, one of Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, or Jalen Hurts. And frankly, I'm with you. I don't know how Jalen Hurts isn't favored after his performance last week.
Yeah, and on top of that, the Eagles' offensive line had what I think like 7 penalties, offensive line altogether. Like it was not their best performance yet. Hurts still, despite all that, played a really good game, his best game, which translated to AJ Brown. I'm going to shift to now, getting his revenge against the Titans. I mentioned the one touchdown, but he had one earlier, which was the 41-yarder. He was wide open. I mean, there was clear PI from the defender, the Titans defender, and then I mean AJ Brown just ran right through him. I mean that was just. I thought that was going to get called back. I thought it was offensive PI, but no, it was the defense that got in the way of his sluggo route. And just, I mean, manhandled the defender. He was injured on the play too. AJ Brown just. Oh my God, it was so good. He had 8 receptions, 119 yards, 2 touchdowns. Obviously, the 41 and 29-yarder, and he leads the team with 950 yards, 61 receptions, 9 touchdowns. The thing that's fascinating to me is the Titans firing their GM after the fact. I don't know if it's the AJ Brown trade that played a role in that, but I feel like it has to have played some sort of, because they've had winning seasons under him for. I don't even know how many seasons.
It honestly is kind of peculiar because they do have a good roster. And I mean, don't forget, they were still the number 1 overall seed last year, but in the AFC. And don't forget, look to the flip side, too. The guy that they brought in to replace him, Treylon Burks, 1 reception for 25 yards on the day. So,
I mean, he did get knocked out, to be fair.
I'm sorry. I didn't realize that. I'm just looking at the stats.
No,
again, I didn't
good.
watch the game. So thank you for bringing up that point. My bad on that one, but I will say this Titans offense certainly does miss AJ Brown, and I think he added a dynamic to their offense that they just don't have this year, and that's why we're seeing them kind of be a mid-level, a mid-tier team rather than kind of up in that top echelon they were in the regular season last year.
Yeah,
and the Eagles are reaping the benefit from it.
Yeah, exactly. So that's their loss, our gain. Just pure dominance all around that game. This was. Even special teams played their best game. Like this was the most complete win this Eagles team has had all season. And man, I hope this is a sign for better, like more things to come, because I feel like they're really starting to put it all together right now.
Hey, we were talking. I remember saying like maybe 2-3 weeks ago, like when the Eagles, when they were losing to the Commanders and struggling against the run. If they're going to have a bad stretch of games, you'd rather it be now when there's 2, 3, 4 weeks left before the playoffs and them go through their bad stretch. If this is them getting on the backside of their bad stretch of games, their bad stretch of the season, or they only lost 1 game and they're going to sit here 11-1 and they're already past their rough stretch, and now they're going to kind of fine-tune things as they head into the playoffs and hopefully secure this division and number 1 overall seed. Hey, if it's a sign of good things to come, you can get very excited as an Eagles fan.
Oh yeah, I'm. Yeah, very very excited. Yeah, we'll get into the Giants game in a little bit, but yeah, that was
sounds good. Sounds good. We can move back over to the Steelers, unless you want to. I mean, I think it's pretty obvious who your player of the game was, but
yeah, Jalen Hurts. And I forgot to mention he also broke another record. First Eagle with 350 passing yards, 3 passing touchdowns, and a rushing touchdown. So that's another record, another week with another record broken. So I mean, Jalen Hurts is just phenomenal.
It's wild. It's wild. He's, I mean, MVP, man. I mean, I don't know how he's not. Who else are you choosing? All right, sounds good. Let's talk a little bit about this Steelers game that's coming up next week. They're taking on the division rival Ravens, and I think there's two key factors that I look at in this game specifically, first and foremost. One, I think the one that jumps off the page, everybody's obviously going to talk about, is no Lamar Jackson. He's not playing in this one. So what's that different dynamic going to be like with Ty Huntley in there instead, leading the offense? I believe that the Steelers played against Ty Huntley last year. There was a game that Lamar Jackson was out, and they got the win. I didn't look that up before I hopped on the show, but they're familiar with Ty Huntley in the past, or maybe he came in relief if Lamar Jackson got hurt midway through a game. But Ty Huntley's definitely someone, he's not as good of a player as Lamar Jackson, but maybe a little bit better throwing the ball. I don't know if that's outlandish to say. I think he's certainly going to be a guy that's more going to stand in the pocket and try to make throws versus create with his legs. That's just more of his game. Lamar Jackson's arguably the best rushing quarterback in the NFL. So there's certainly going to be a different dynamic there. I don't know if that's necessarily going to be beneficial for the Steelers or a detriment, but certainly something different than having to game plan for trying to stop Lamar Jackson on the ground, which at the end of the day, that's going to be a benefit to the Steelers defense, because that's the main thing. When you play the Ravens, you worry about, all right, how do we prevent Lamar Jackson from running all over us? The fact that they don't have to do that now, I think they can certainly game plan it like you would a more prototypical quarterback. And look, Ty Huntley's been in this system now for a while. I say a while. I think last year was his first season with the Ravens, but he's going to have more experience with what's going on here. So it's not like you're coming in here and it's necessarily a full-fledged, rookie quarterback or someone completely new to the system that's just getting thrown to the fire. This is a guy that's familiar with the team and has shown some talent at times, but certainly beneficial to the Steelers that it's him versus Lamar instead of Lamar Jackson going up against them this week.
Yeah, it definitely is. That's a huge loss for the Ravens. The fact that Lamar Jackson injured, Steelers benefit, yeah, for sure. And it's like the Steelers need to win this game too to stay relevant. And so, I mean, it was almost like perfect timing that when this happened, this injury. You don't really wish injuries upon other players, but
but for the Steelers benefit for sure.
Yeah, exactly. But it's definitely going to be interesting to watch how the Ravens offense plays out, because they're obviously a run first team with under Lamar Jackson, and Huntley is not exactly, like you said, not exactly Lamar Jackson, more of a pocket passer. So are the Steelers at home for this one?
The Steelers are at home for this one.
Okay.
They are at home, which I think is very big as well.
Yeah.
Because, hey, ride the momentum that you have from the past couple of days, and with your fans, this is a game. Look, at the very least, you've got to win one of the two this season against the Ravens.
Yeah.
Everything is on the plate for this to be the one of the two you take. And if you get the win now, you go into Baltimore week 17, I believe it is, and you see what happens. But you've already if you already have one win against them in your back pocket, that's going to be huge. Now, I will say the one thing that's a little bit concerning to me is I've talked so much in this episode about how the Steelers have really, made this identity of running the football and not turning the ball over. Well, the Ravens are extremely good against the run. They're the second overall defense against the run this year. So do the Steelers change up from that and, maybe rely a little bit more on Kenny Pickett in the passing attack? The Ravens are in the bottom half of the league against bottom half of the league when it comes to one of the stats I was looking up this morning. I should have wrote it down, but
I know it's against 25th against the pass.
25th against the pass. I couldn't remember if it was total yards or yards against the pass, but hey, if they're a little worse against the pass, that's something to consider. But to me, I say at least the game plan to start this game is, stick to your identity, run the ball, don't turn the ball over, and see if your offensive line, see how good they've really become, see how good they've really meshed together this season. This is going to be a real test to see if this offensive line has truly progressed or if they've just benefited the past couple weeks from maybe playing subpar D lines. So, this is going to be a huge test, and I'm hoping that the Steelers can still find a way to kind of run this offense through their rushing attack and stick to that formula that's been successful in recent weeks.
Yeah, if the Steelers, if the Steelers keep going at it with the running game, and the Ravens, who you said are the second best team against the run, in yards per game at least, that could spell trouble for the Ravens. So I mean, as long as I mean, the offensive line's been playing fairly well as of late, so maybe they keep this momentum going. They find a way to open more holes again against the Ravens. So it's certainly possible to at least keep the run game in somewhat consistent throughout this game. It's just I think personally, yeah, that the Steelers are going to rely more on the pass game.
Yeah, I think you're right. We're going to see a more balanced attack, but and again, I think that only makes it so much more imperative then if they're going to rely less on the run game and look more to the passing attack. It's going to be imperative that they continue to protect the ball, don't turn it over,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
if you already now have to go outside of your identity a little bit, run the ball less than you'd maybe like to, and you have in weeks past, you got to hold on to the football. That's going to be really key. And don't give Ty Huntley the ball in prime positions. Make him have to drive the length of the field when the Eagles are on offense. Don't give them opportunities. Starting on the Steelers side of the field to potentially come away with points. So I think that only makes it that much more key to what the Steelers are trying to do. And then one last point I have, I'm starting to wonder a little bit where this Ravens locker room is at. You talk about coming into this last week. I think it was like 4 games in a row or something like that, or maybe throughout the season. They had blown fourth quarter leads or
yeah.
leads in the second half. And then last week, a game that everybody said that they had to have. They go in there. Hey, they beat the Broncos. A win is a win in the NFL, but 10-9 is certainly not inspiring by any means.
No.
So I'm just wondering a little bit where this Ravens locker room is at. Obviously, Harbaugh is one of the best head coaches in the NFL, so I'm sure he's going to have his guys ready to go. And obviously, they're still sitting in a playoff picture. But man, they've had a demoralizing couple of weeks throughout the season here. That I don't know. Maybe the Steelers can continue to capitalize on.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think you said it perfectly. So I don't really have much to add on that.
All right, man. Well, I do also want to talk very, very briefly here before we transition over to the Eagles. But you take a quick look at this playoff picture, and again, I'll say it's one of those things where, again, the Steelers are sitting here with 7 losses. It's tough. They've got to jump a lot of teams that they've lost to in the past. But you talk about teams like the Dolphins and the Jets both losing last week. The Titans obviously lost to the Eagles. The Ravens are looking all right now, but again, there's an opportunity here if the Steelers can continue to win to keep jumping. And I'll also say, Cincinnati Bengals are 8-4. That's the same record as the Baltimore Ravens, who currently hold the tiebreaker over the Bengals. But you get this win over the Ravens, that drops them down to 8-5, just 2 games ahead of the Steelers. You're going to pull yourself within some striking distance here of the playoffs. So I think this game is definitely key. And who knows if the Ravens maybe struggle a little bit without Lamar Jackson, depending on how long he's out, if it's going to be kind of a week-to-week thing. Maybe that's a team that the Steelers jump. Maybe that's a team that the Steelers can catch up to if the Ravens struggle a little bit, because the Bengals are certainly looking really good right now. Like they're kind of charging for that division win. And you've got the Ravens 2 more times. So again, because of the hole the Steelers dug themselves into earlier in the season, a way you can dig yourself out is going to start this is really going to be key this week. Beat the Ravens at home, and then you're going to have them again later in the season to potentially beat them again and really make things interesting. So, hey, this is a huge game, division rival. This is your arguably your greatest rival in the history of your franchise. Go out there, Acrisure Stadium, get the win. So we will see what happens. It's going to be a huge game. That being said, let's talk a little bit about the Eagles here and their upcoming game as well.
All right, first matchup against the Giants at MetLife, and this is the first of the Eagles' 3 road games. So this is going to be a tough stretch of games that the Birds have for the next few weeks. Let's see. I mean, I think the first thing really is to stop Saquon. On the season, he has 242 carries, 1,055 rush yards, 241 receiving yards, 8 touchdowns, all rushing. So, I mean, my thing with Saquon is like I think Daniel Jones, like, I mean, he tends to check the ball down a lot. So, and when you give Saquon, the ball, and he'll find a way to break tackles and like make plays in open space. That's what I'm most worried about in this game. He's a bit more. I mean, what's the word I'm looking for? Compared to Derrick Henry, he's a bit more
Shifty.
versatile in that sense. He's better pass catcher.
Yeah, certainly.
than Derrick Henry is for sure. So I think he's even more of a threat than Derrick Henry is. So I mean,
They
if
both
they
they definitely it's a different style of running back you have to plan for.
yes. I mean, he's so good at breaking tackles, and he can break a long one, and like if you don't get him to the ground, he's just so. I mean, this offense kind of relies on him too. Daniel Jones is more of like I'm gonna say like game manager. He just keeps the ball out of harm's way for the most part, checks it down when he needs to, and he'll throw it downfield every now and then. But I don't think he's, and then he'll run it too when he's like under pressure or whatever, or like nothing's there um, in the passing game. So I think it's going to be about stopping Saquon and obviously keeping Daniel Jones in the pocket is going to be a big part of it too, which is already it kind of adds another level of difficulty when you have a mobile quarterback and a really good running back. So I think that's the first thing I'll look at for this game.
I definitely hear what you're saying. I'm curious where your thoughts are with the Eagles. I really want to hear you talk about how you see the dynamic being of the Eagles offense against the Jets defense. Because to me, I think that's where this game is going to be. One, I think we kind of know we know what this Giants offense is. They're not going to blow you away with anything. So in my mind, I think the key matchup is a little bit more perhaps how like what the Eagles offense can do against the Giants defense. I'm curious if there's anything you're kind of worried about, if there's anybody you're like, hey, this is the one guy that could maybe slow us down on offense. So I'm curious how you think that kind of matches up on the other side of the football.
I mean, yeah, I do have it in one thing I'm looking like one of the other things I'm looking for in this game, just which part of the offense steps up this time around. I mean, looking at the stats, the Giants are 17th against the pass, so middle of the pack, 28th in sacks, 25, 26th against the run, 7th most yards per game allowed, 3rd most yards per attempt allowed. So this team is more of a bend don't break kind of defense.
Mm-hmm.
With that being said, they still give up a lot of yards. And so really, I mean, the stat that I'm looking at is the run, 26th against the run. So this could be another big running game, rushing game for Jalen Hurts and Miles Sanders and Boston Scott, whoever else you want to throw in there, Kenny Gainwell. So I think that's where the Eagles can heavily rely on. I mean, the last 2 weeks, Nick Sirianni, Shane Steichen, the offensive coordinator, have done a really good job of really attacking the weaknesses of the last two defenses, the Packers against the run, the Titans against the pass, and this week it's the Giants against the run. So if they, I mean, assuming they kind of stick with that
holds
logic,
up there,
then that's where they should be leaning towards. And like I said, Giants give up a lot of yards anyway, so it could be really a balanced game overall.
The one thing that I'm kind of looking at, I think specifically with the way that this offense attacks the Giants defense, I think what you're saying makes a lot of sense, but I do think it's still going to be a bit of a balanced attack because in my mind, the way that I kind of view the Giants is it's like they're very much reliant on just stay within striking distance throughout the game. So like I just don't think this Giants offense is built. Like if they go down a decent amount of points, I think we saw it when the Giants lost to the Lions. You get down a decent amount of points, they're just not built to air the ball out and really get back into a game. So if the Eagles can maybe have one of their dominant second quarters like we've seen them do at various points throughout the season, if they can really win the first half, maybe put up a double-digit lead on the Giants, I think that's going to put that much more pressure on the Giants and Daniel Jones to air the ball out and try to make something happen. And I think that's where the Giants will run into kind of their own mistakes a little bit. So I want to see, can the Eagles kind of get ahead in the first half and really force the Giants to go outside their comfort zone? Because so much of what they do, like you said, is built around run the ball with Saquon Barkley, let Daniel Jones kind of be a game manager to a certain extent, look for his first read. If it's not there, check it down or get out on the run. They get him out on bootlegs and everything like that. So if they can kind of put up a number on the Giants in the first half, I think we can see the Giants, get outside of their comfort zone, do stuff that they're not really built to do, and the Eagles could potentially cruise to a win in the second half and, kind of like you said, if they can dominate in the running game, kind of salt the game away as it goes on. So I definitely think this is a matchup that the Eagles are built to win. It's, obviously playing in New York is a little bit of a factor, and the Giants are fighting for their playoff lives in every game. But I certainly like the Eagles in this game.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, I think the Eagles are catching the Giants at a pretty good time. At least they're 1-3-1 their last 5 games. I mean, they tied against the Commanders last week, which was that was an interesting performance, but
Definitely demoralizing for the Giants in that one.
yeah, it certainly didn't help their cause for the playoff push. So they might be a little desperate right now too, which I said against the Packers. I vote for the Packers team too, and I mean that was a close one to the end. So who knows how this one will play out? But I do agree with you. The Eagles should get ahead early. I mean that way because you said like the Giants' offense isn't really built to come back to air it out and that sort of thing. So if the Eagles can do that, I think they'll win the game. I think they're going to win the game regardless. But
yeah, it really to me is a question of, can you just get it to a point where you don't have to sweat it out throughout? Like don't let the Giants stay close. For as much as I know that the Eagles are capable of running the ball, if you can get a couple stops on the Giants, put a couple of scores up early, I think that's going to be so huge. Just create a little bit of distance and see if the Giants start to do stuff that they're really not good at. And as a result, it may force them into some turnovers or some 3-and-outs or just some bad possessions. And again, something we haven't touched on, the Giants' best receiver right now is Darius Slayton. So, I mean, if you're James Bradbury and Darius Slayton, I think you're licking your lips a little bit about the idea of locking up this Giants wide receiver core and really having a little bit of a day in the secondary.
Yeah, that's a good point you brought up. I thought about it. I was like, well, I can just brush it aside. I was like, they'll be fine. Darius Slay and James Bradbury do their jobs. There's not, I'm not worried about the middle. But yeah,
I think that this is a game that I think we're both in lockstep here. Like, we like the Eagles in this one, and hey, get this win because again, first to 3 on the road, and obviously you've got the big Dallas one coming up on Christmas Eve. Get this win under your belt in case something goes haywire in the next 2 while you're on the road. So
exactly.
I think we're in lockstep here on what the Eagles have to do. Any other things you're kind of looking at in this game before we wrap things up?
I'm just looking at the entire NFC picture as it stands. I mean, the Vikings have the easiest remaining schedule.
It's insane because I feel like they're 10-2, and I feel like nobody's truly buying into them.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know why they're not. Like, the defense is it's all right. It's mediocre. The Vikings' offense is pretty good. So I don't know. I mean, they have T.J. Hawkinson. They have Adam Thielen. I feel like has gone under the radar. Justin Jefferson, obviously, superstar. Dalvin Cook still in the backfield. So like, that's an offense no team wants to play. I mean, they're going to make the postseason, and at this point, like, they've kind of won the division at this because like the other teams are just not good.
Certainly locked up the division. I think they're just gunning for the Eagles' top. Looking for that first round bye.
That's what I'm worried about. But
I mean, the other thing with the Vikings too. I mean, they went up against a really good Jets defense last week and hung. I think it was 26 points on them. So I mean, they're certainly capable of. And really, ever since they brought in the new head coach Kevin O'Connell, I think he's maybe added a little bit of an extra dynamic to that offense that wasn't there last year. So I mean, who knows? I don't know if the Vikings necessarily scare me at this point in the NFC as being a true contender. I always liked the 49ers better in the NFC until, obviously Jimmy Garoppolo going down. That really throws a wrench in things in the NFC. But I don't know. It's interesting. Like you said, I didn't realize they had the easiest remaining schedule. So the Eagles really got to be on top of their stuff here throughout the remainder, really through this road trip first and foremost, and then the remainder of this season to make sure they can hold on to that first round bye.
Yeah, the Eagles just can't lose 2 games this season, at all. They just can't afford it.
Yeah, max, they can lose 1 more.
Yes.
Essentially. Yeah. All right, man. Sounds good. You got anything else you want to add here?
No, man, that's all I got. Go Birds, man. Go Steelers.
Go Steelers. I think sometimes it's as simple as that. So that's going to wrap up everything we got here. Of course, we will be back next week breaking down both of these games and looking ahead to the rest of the season. and the Week 15 matchup. So thank you for tuning in whenever you watch this. And that is everything that we have for you today. We will talk to you later. See you later. Bye.